Today we are going to be discussing, I am going to be discussing, you are going to be listening, hopefully, on my philosophy on weight training. Since it is an introductory video, I will be explaining some more basic ideas. All right, let's get into it. So, philosophy, you sound kind of pretentious. You sound a little full of yourself, like I'm some sort of philosophizer. And I don't mean it that way. And I didn't come up with any of this. I didn't sit in a lab and do studies, with my little white lab trench coat. No, just my lab coat with my lab. Stupid. This is stuff that I got advice from friends or other people at the gym, online, school, every place that you can get it, my own personal experience being at the gym, and I just combined it all, I smushed it all into a Frankenstein workout philosophy. So what I mean by philosophy is these are the reasons why I train the way I train. And if somehow I've tricked some of you into thinking that I am some sort of professional this early on in the videos, I'm just a dude. I'm fallible. So some of the things that I believe and some of the things that I implement into my own training regimen are going to be things that are based on science. And other things are going to be based off of bro science or pseudoscience masquerading as real science. So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind. I'm going to be throwing a lot of things out in this video. And like everything that you find on the internet, don't take it as gospel. Don't take it as the one source, the one way to do something, and everyone who deviates from this one sacred way of doing something that's the wrong way. That's not what I'm getting at. If you're new to working out, verify the things that I'm saying to you, especially if they sound off, but if you're new and you're building a foundation, just make sure that the information that you're getting is good information. And if you're not new to working out, then start warming up your fingers for the comment section so you can inform everyone how everything I said was so stupid and why I'm stupid and why everyone should subscribe to your YouTube channel because that's where everyone's going to find the real science and get the real results and get big. So, just look out for that guy in the comment section because that dude's got it all figured out. So I'm also going to give you another little caveat, another warning on the front end. I have a really bad tendency when I talk about something, I assume people know what I know, and that's not the case because we're not quite at the point in technology where we can read each other's minds yet. And so, as such, I leave out important information when I talk about something. So I'll talk about the conclusion without talking about all the information that has led to that conclusion. So, in an attempt to not do that with you all, especially in this video, I am going to perhaps over-explain some things that might be obvious to you. If that's the case, then it's possible this video wasn't necessarily for you. This video is more so gauged for the completely new gym goer, the novice, the more casual, who may not know as much about the basics and fundamentals of weight training. But to zoom out a little bit, my whole channel is going to be about chronicling in the era of GLP-1s and their unknown long-term effects on humans, what good old-fashioned diet and exercise can do, specifically my exercise routine. And when I say diet, I don't necessarily mean one particular type of diet. I don't mean like a keto diet or a paleo diet. I'm not really sticking to any sort of diet in that regards. I just mean diet as far as I'm going to be eating less. So I'm going to be moving more and eating less, which is the secret formula to losing weight for just about everything. All right, so let's start getting into the meat of this a little bit. Let's talk about my gym activities. And what do I do when I go to the gym? So right now, pretty much only weightlifting. I do have a dog and I walk that dog once a day for about 30 to 40 minutes. Sometimes I walk her twice a day. So other than that, no cardio and no stretching. So that's not because, some gym rat mentality of cardio destroys muscle and don't do cardio if you're trying to build muscle or something like that, because that definitely isn't the case. Cardio does not destroy muscles. And I don't stretch because people who stretch are, are sissies. It's nothing like that. I don't do cardio because it's mind numbingly boring to me. I believe that's the case for a lot of people. Cardio is kind of just something that you have to get through. Not for everyone, and I'm not trying to put down people who enjoy cardio or anything like that. It's just I personally do not enjoy cardio, and I'm at the point in my workout regimen where I can't really afford to do something that is boring to me. Something that is going to I'm already doing something new. I'm already starting to work out from not working out. So every time I go to the gym, as I'm building this routine, I kind of have to persuade myself to go. And whether I'm doing that consciously or subconsciously, that's what's happening. And there are certain days where I am very consciously saying, you need to go to the gym. And on those days where I'm very resistant to wanting to go to the gym, I know that if I had some sort of cardio routine waiting for me at the gym, that it would just be very easy for me to say, okay, I'm just going to skip today and I'll go tomorrow. But everyone knows that I'm not going to go to the gym tomorrow because I put it off. And the more you put it off, it's just the easier it is to not go. So right now, I'm at the stage where it's counterintuitively more beneficial for me not to do cardio than to do cardio in my routine. And then I don't stretch because I'm a sissy. Stretching I hate it. It's very uncomfortable for me. I don't like the sensation. I don't like how stretching feels. It's just very uncomfortable for me. But there have been times where I have incorporated some sort of stretching regimen to my routine, and I never saw changes in my flexibility. It's sort of like me and tanning. People come up to me and be like, "Oh, you're so pale. Why don't you just go out into the sun and just, get that first layer of sunburn, and then you can build off that foundation and start getting a tan." Well, person whose opinion I did not ask for, I that doesn't happen for me. What happens is I go outside 10, 15 minutes and I get burnt. And then, depending on the severity of the burn, my skin peels, and then I go back to the same pasty, translucent, white skin shade that I was before. So stretching has given me those same results, where there's been times in the past where 10 to 20 minutes a day, I am stretching. I am doing hard stretching. I'm not just sitting there pretending to reach for my toes. I'm stretching and reaching for my toes, if not touching my toes, and I'm uncomfortable the whole time. When I'm done, I do have slightly more range of motion than I did before when I started stretching. Aha! So you do get some benefits of stretching. Then an hour or so goes by, and I'm right back to the same level of flexibility I was before stretching. I've ran this experiment several times, and I've always gotten the same result. However, big caveat here, guys. This is going to be one of those moments where I say, do as I say, not do as I do, also known as a hypocrite. I really advise against not having some sort of cardio or flexibility training in your health routine. Cardio, it, it's your heart. It's super important. Your heart health is just very important. And then flexibility is super important to avoid injury when you're lifting or injury when you're just living your life, and to maintain autonomy as you age. So eventually, one day, I will have to lift, pun intended, my moratorium on stretching. But that day isn't today, so the moratorium stands. Next, let's get into the different types of weight training. So typically, these are broken into three different categories. You have strength, endurance, and hypertrophy. So strength, you're lifting to get stronger. Endurance, you're lifting to increase the duration of activities that you do, or the duration on which you can do something. And then hypertrophy is kind of a fancy word for increasing your muscle size. Now, I imagine you can break down these categories even further if you wanted to, categories within categories, if you want to get super esoteric. And I don't want to. I don't want to do that for this video. That's not the purpose of this video. So suffice it to say, for this video, there are three main categories of weight training: strength, endurance, and hypertrophy. So getting into those a little bit more, this is going to be a brief overview of those different categories. And as such, it's going to be perhaps an oversimplification. So just know there's a lot more to this and a lot more depth into really getting into lifting for strength, lifting for endurance, and lifting for hypertrophy. These wells run very deep. But for the purpose of this video, I'm really going to simplify it. And to define those categories, the metrics that I'm going to use to delineate the differences between them are going to be rep range and rest intervals. So if you don't know what rep range is, it's how many repetitions or reps you do per exercise. So moving forward, instead of repetitions, I'm just going to say reps. So if I'm doing bicep curls and I curl the barbell 7 times, that means I did 7 reps with the barbell. Then a rest interval is the amount of time you rest in between sets. So I just introduced a new term, so let's define it. What is a set? A set is a group of reps done consecutively, punctuated by a rest interval. So 3 sets of 6 reps would be doing a certain exercise. So let's say bicep curls, because that's an example I'm going to be giving over and over again in this video, for 6 reps, then resting for a certain amount of time. That rest period, again, is your rest interval. That would be your first set. And then your next set is doing 6 more reps, and then resting again after you have done those 6 reps. And then after you've rested, you do 6 more reps for a total of 18 reps, 3 sets of 6. So now that we've defined sets, reps, and rest intervals, we can dive into those categories a little bit more. So what weightlifting for strength looks like, what weightlifting for endurance looks like, and what weightlifting for hypertrophy looks like. And if you haven't quite grasped sets and reps, like the difference between the two, it took me a little bit to learn as well, but don't worry about it because I will be using those terms throughout this video. So I am imagining by the end of the video, you will have just a rock solid understanding of what those words mean. All right, so let's dive into those categories. We have weightlifting for strength. And I am going to caveat this again because there's going to be some people who, people just love getting upset over everything. So this is not comprehensive. This will be a shallow overview, a super oversimplistic way of looking at this. There's a ton of nuance. So caveat aside, let's go ahead and use very simple definitions for these categories. And remember, we're going to be defining these categories by rep range and rest intervals. So with weight training for strength, the rep range is anywhere from 1 to 6 reps. Typically, people are doing sets of 3 to 5. And then the rest intervals they're going to be longer. So they can be anywhere from a couple of minutes until the end of time. Basically, it's as long as it takes for you to recover from your last set. So the idea behind this is because you're lifting for strength, you're lifting at close to the maximum weight that you can lift on any particular exercise. You're always kind of going to be very close to lifting your maximum amount of weight, even in that lower rep range. So in order to do that consecutively, you need a lot of time to recover in between your sets. So that's why the rest intervals with strength training, it's very loose. Okay, the next category is lifting for endurance. So with endurance, well, let's try that again. With endurance, you're in the higher rep range and lower rest interval. The typical rep range is 12 to 20, and the rest intervals are on the shorter side. So you're typically resting anywhere from 15 to 45 seconds in between each set. And unlike strength and hypertrophy, you aren't lifting to failure. And I'll define failure in a moment. It isn't the same definition of failure that my teachers used to throw at me all the time when I was in school. We're not talking about that. But I'll define that more in a little bit. So with endurance, you're lifting a weight that is just maybe barely, it's starting to give your muscles that burning sensation. So I would actually say it's definitely giving you a muscle burning sensation, but it's going to be at a manageable threshold. So it isn't the muscle that's fatiguing. That's going to be the limiter of the exercise. This is going to be more of a cardio-centric, cardio-dependent methodology of lifting weights. So more so better for athletes who do a repetitive motion continuously during an event like rowers, or for people who just want to do a shorter, intense workout and then get on with the rest of their day. So last up, hypertrophy. With this methodology, you're in the 6 to 12 rep range, usually looking to hit 8 to 10 reps per set. The rest interval is a minute to a minute and a half. All right, now we got those terms defined. We can move on. Yeah, we can move on. So because all of this is kind of based off of rep range, how do you find your rep range? And in order to do that, you first need to define what you're lifting for. Are you lifting for endurance? Are you lifting for strength? Or are you lifting for hypertrophy? If you lift 5 pounds for 3 reps and then rest for 15 minutes, does that mean you're lifting for strength? Because with how you defined it, that would actually fit the definition. So to that, I would say it could in certain populations, like a person who's rehabbing or a person who is very advanced in age, but typically, no. You're not going to be finding a lot of strength gains with that amount of weight, with that amount of rest for the general population. This is where failure comes in. You want failure to be your guide on rep range. So failure is how we are going to find our rep range. This is going to be my personal definition of how I define failure. And I define it as the point in the exercise where you can no longer continue doing the exercise without breaking form, when you can no longer continue doing reps without recruiting other muscles to help you. So what I mean by this is we're going to go to our tried and true example of bicep curls. Once you start swinging your body to get the weight up for each rep, then that last rep you did before you started swinging your body, that would be failure. So another example is you're doing dumbbell presses, you're laying flat on your back, you're pressing the weight up, and once you're on that rep where you start kind of lifting your hips to give you that momentum of getting the weight up, that's where I define failure. Now I can imagine some gym rats and some gym brats saying, well, that's a soft definition of failure. And that's fine because it sort of is. However, I like defining failure in this way because it's for injury prevention. The more fatigued you are, the more you're breaking form to continue lifting, the higher risk you have of injuring yourself. So you can go ahead and do those maximum effort hip thrusts to rock your whole body to get those last couple of curls out, but don't be surprised when later in the day or just randomly throughout time you drop a pencil and then you bend over to pick it up and then oh my back, oh my back, because that's how that happens. At least one of the ways that it can happen. It's not because that pencil was super heavy or gravity suddenly had a super strong hold of that pencil and it was just some space-time continuum anomaly. It was because you're lifting wrong constantly. Your body is constantly having to compensate for your lifts in ways that it shouldn't. And then you injure yourself. So that's why when I lift, I kind of like my failure rep to be the last rep that I can do with strict form. And that's not to discourage people spotting you, or like, let's say you're doing single arm curls and you want to kind of, get that pump, get that pump. And so you use your other arm to help assist you when you're lifting. That's not really what I'm talking about. Or if you're doing bench press and your spotter is helping you move the weight, that's also not what I'm talking about. I'm kind of talking about for the single lifter, the person who's in the gym lifting by themselves, because that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm doing when I go to the gym. I go to the gym by myself. I enjoy working out by myself. So it's just for that instance, that's how I define failure. So now we have all these concepts. We have sets, we have reps, we have rest intervals, we have failure. So let's combine all this into a case study. Let's combine all this into an example. So in our example, we have Frank. Frank wants to start training for strength. He's never lifted before, so he doesn't know how much weight he can lift. What he does know from my video, thanks for watching, Frank, that he wants to do 4 to 6 reps per exercise. And so for this exercise, he's going to be doing squats. And squats are just when you have the barbell on your back and then you bend your knees. There's a lot more to it, but that's, I imagine most people in their head can picture what a squat is. So after a proper warm-up, Frank goes to the squat rack and he puts 2 45-pound plates on each side of the bar. He's been watching a lot of YouTube videos, and that seems to be about the average weight that he sees people putting on the bar when they squat. Frank situates himself under the bar, he lifts it off the rack, takes a half a step back, and collapses under the weight. He was ego lifting, and not only did his dreams of becoming a pro wrestler get crushed, so did he, smushed by the weight of the bar and the expectations of the world. Sorry, Frank. Next up, we have Tim. Like Frank, Tim is a huge fan of my YouTube channel. Thanks so much, Tim. Really appreciate you. The love and support goes a long way. It helps me a lot. Thanks, brother. Unlike Frank, Tim doesn't want to be crushed like a bug by the bar, so he's going to try and avoid that. Tim saw online that a very popular strength training routine is doing 5 sets of 5. So 5 sets of 5 reps per exercise. So after he warms up, he goes to the squat rack and he tries squatting the bar with no weight. He did 10 reps, and on the 10th rep, he was beginning to struggle. His back was starting to lean forward a little bit, and his knees were starting to, go in. And so he said, great, he reached failure, at least Brian's definition of failure. So he rests until he's just about recovered, and so for his next set, he puts 25-pound weights on both sides of the bar. This next set, he was only able to do 2 reps before he reached failure. Same thing, knees started to go in, back started to go forward. He's breaking his form, so he says, that's it, I failed. I don't want to continue doing this exercise because I don't want to injure myself. So after he finished rest, he drops the weight to 10 pounds on each side, and his next set, he was able to do 5 reps. He hit his goal. Success! Tim found his weight that he should be lifting using rep range and failure as his compass. Now, how is Tim going to know when it's time to increase the weight that he is lifting? Super simple. So when Tim is able to start doing more than 5 reps consistently, once he starts hitting 6 reps, definitely 7 before he's starting to fail, he needs to increase the weight on the bar. So that's how using rep range is a really simple way to keep track and stay on course with your chosen modality of training. It just keeps it nice and simple. Okay, this is what I'm training for. This is the rep range I want to hit. And then when I do this much weight, am I in that rep range? It's just a very basic, simple formula. And that's something that's really helped me making sure that I'm staying on course with the goals that I have when I'm training. An important disclaimer that I want to say, outside of any sort of weightlifting competition, it's just you versus you. You don't need to compare the weight that you can move with the weight the person who's standing next to you can lift on a certain exercise. It really doesn't matter. What matters is that you're showing up and putting in the work. Yeah, super cheesy, but that's really what matters, because that person that's lifting the certain amount of weight, maybe they're an idiot and they're lifting 80-pound dumbbells with each arm, but like their range of motion is this. So they're not even moving anything, but they look like a complete idiot. But if you're thinking in your head, well, that person's curling 80 pounds and I can only curl 10 pounds. I can only curl 5 pounds. Man, I'm just wasting my time. That's not the case. Weightlifting, training, health, it's always just you versus you. It's a process. Eventually, yeah, you will increase in your body changing and adapting to the exercises, but that takes time and you kind of just have to respect the process. So that brings me into the last point that I really want to touch upon. Whether you're lifting primarily for strength, hypertrophy, or endurance, there will always be overlap in the benefits you receive. So what I mean by that is when you train for strength, your muscles, they're going to get bigger and your endurance will increase. Like what I was saying about Tim, as he's lifting for strength, he's going to be able to do eventually 6 reps, what he was only able to do for 5 reps. The same thing for endurance. Your muscle size will increase and your strength will increase. It's just that if you're training for endurance, then you're not optimizing for strength. If you're training for strength, you're not optimizing for endurance. You're not optimizing for hypertrophy. But this is why I personally trained for hypertrophy. To me, this is the Goldilocks of the three. Your muscles increase in size, your strength increases because you're lifting a relatively heavy weight, but not lifting a super heavy weight to put that extra load on your joints. And your endurance is going to increase because your rest intervals are shorter. So that's just something to keep in mind whenever you're kind of deciding on like what category, or well, if you decide to use this philosophy of what category of weight training do you want to do? Do you want to do strength, endurance, hypertrophy? You're still going to get multiple benefits from lifting. And the benefits from weightlifting, it's a lot more than just strength, endurance, or your muscles increasing in size. One quick example is bone density. Your bone density is going to increase when you weightlift. Now, whether your bone density increases a lot or a little will depend on the load that you put on it. So your bone density isn't going to increase as much if you're lifting for endurance. It'll probably increase the most with strength because you're putting the biggest load on your body, saying that, hey, I need to adapt to this load so that I can move this weight without my bones breaking. And that's kind of why it's super important for all women to have a weight training routine, because as you hit a certain age, as you go into menopause, the body goes through a lot of changes. And one of the changes that it does, it takes calcium out of your bones, it decreases your bone density. And that's why a lot of older females do have the hip breaks, the leg breaks. Unfortunate part of aging, but to a certain degree, like everything, like how when you get older, muscle mass starts going away. So if you're weight training, you can decrease the amount of muscle mass that you lose. You're always going to lose it as you get older, assuming you're not on some sort of like testosterone replacement or steroids, like outright steroids. The same thing can happen with bone density. You can limit more so how much your bone density is decreasing because you're still putting a load on your bones. So your brain's going to say, hey, these hormones are telling me to do a certain thing, but the body is being put under this load. The body is being used in this certain way to where I need to maintain bone density. So again, the bone density will decrease over time, but it will decrease less as long as you're weight training or doing something where you're putting more weight on your body. The coolest thing that I think about weight training is that it doesn't matter when you start. It doesn't matter if you start when you're a young kid or if you're an 80-year-old person. You're always going to see the benefits of it, assuming that you're not injuring yourself, assuming that you're doing it safely. Your body will adapt in a positive way. You will increase muscle mass. You will increase bone density. Your blood work will improve. Those numbers will improve. There will be a difference. So you're never too far gone to start working out, even if you're 100. If you're 150, probably just, you've gone that far and you haven't weightlifted. So I wouldn't mess with anything. But if you're 149, I would say go for it. You're gonna see the benefits from it. It's gonna be worth it. So it's never too late. It's never not worth it. All right, so that covers about most of what I wanted to cover in the video. I actually covered a little bit more than what I thought I was going to cover in this video, but the biggest takeaway is the different modalities of training. Weightlifting for strength, weightlifting for endurance, weightlifting for hypertrophy. Those are the biggest things because I'm going to build on that idea in the next video when I talk about my workout split because again, the big picture for this channel, it's not for me to teach you things. I want to pepper in those videos if that's interesting to people. If you want me to answer questions, I would love to answer your questions in the comments. Unless I don't, unless you ask questions that I don't want to answer, then I won't answer those questions. But for the most part, if that's something you want, if there's information that I have that you would like, go ahead and ask it. And the worst I can do is not answer it. That's not true. The worst I can do is like chastise you or something, or ban you from the channel, or embarrass you or something like that. But I don't have plans to do that. I might do it, but I don't really have plans to do it. But to get back to what I was saying, the bigger point of this channel, the specific point of this channel is for me to chronologize what I'm doing, the exercises that I'm doing, so you can see how my body adapts and changes with these exercises. And I'm doing it because I would have loved to have that information when I was in my younger days of lifting, when I was like in my late teens, early 20s. People were a lot more secretive with the supplements they were using. People were a lot more secretive about their diet. People were a lot more secretive about their routine. And maybe they would give you some things, but they would hold some things back because they would want that edge. And for the most part, a lot of those people were just doing steroids. That was their competitive edge that they wouldn't say. But now it's a lot more commonplace for people to be a lot more free flowing with the information and what they're doing. That's what I'm going to do, but I'm going to do it in a way that you can kind of week by week watch me, week by week see the exercises I'm doing, and then see exactly how my body is adapting to those changes. A super big bonus for me would be if you guys decided to get healthy alongside of me. That would be really cool. But that's not mandatory because sometimes it's just fun to watch people and change or not change. Let's see if this is a huge failure. I don't know. I'm older now, so I don't know if the same lifting philosophy is going to still work for me. I might have to incorporate different things. I might have to train a way that I don't want to train to really get the momentum going for my body to change and let go of all this fat that I had a lot of fun putting on my body that I really enjoyed. Man, those Friday night pizza nights, donut nights, they're the best. But if you keep eating like that, you don't get to have that many of them. I guess maybe moderation. But I'm rambling. I'm getting off track. So let's go ahead and recap everything. This is the philosophy that I use that has gotten me good results in the past. I do hypertrophy. I trained for hypertrophy. Cardio is too boring. I'm a sissy. I don't stretch. I just like lifting weights. And in the same way that I found what I like doing, what I find what works for me, what I find is the easiest way for me to go to the gym each day, I found what works for me. You need to find what works for you. Look at it like this. You have a mountain in front of you, and your goal is to climb it. You need to get on top of that mountain. How are you going to go about climbing that mountain? Are you going to walk up? Are you going to run up? Are you going to skip up? Are you going to climb straight up? You have to find what works for you. Are you going to go 2 steps forward, 1 step back? But eventually you get to the top. That's what you need to figure out. The most effective way is going to be just climbing straight up to the top. But what if you get a quarter of the way and you're like, dang, this is way too hard. I don't want to do this. Well, then that wasn't the best way for you. Even though that was technically the best way to do it, that wasn't the best way for you. Maybe the best way for you is to walk and serpentine and go back and forth. And then eventually you do get to the top, or maybe you do take 3 steps forward and 1 step back. And it's slower and you keep having these setbacks, but eventually you get to the top. That's what matters. What matters is that you climb the mountain. So don't get distracted on that there's only one way to do it because a lot of people are going to try and sell you that they know and only they know. If we're lucky, maybe I'll have one of those people in the comment section saying how I'm an idiot and don't listen to anything I say. And maybe they're right. But regardless, thank you so much for watching the video. I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed it because I enjoyed making it. Hopefully see you in the next video where we will be talking about my workout split. Thanks so much, everybody. I appreciate you. Intensity. And I don't know what I'm saying.